Concerning sociology, now the topic is on culture. You can see on your screen the questions that are there about culture. And one of the questions that are there, you are put there, is religion and culture in African society are inseparable. Of course, that's a debate we cannot exhaust. Yeah, because really you have seen Ninian Smart's, those who have read Ninian Smart's book, Honest to God, he talks about the dimensions of culture. I mean, dimensions of religion, whereby you find, though he's not an African, there's a sense in which he handles quite a number of issues in such a manner that you agree that religion and culture are inseparable. Because if you look at the pillars of culture, for example, you know culture, I underline it on your screen, culture is broad, and you know pillars of culture, Vikingi. Yeah, culture, you joke with it. Culture is culture is broad. You can see culture is broad, and you think of it, the pillars of culture may include religion. It also may include politics, economics, aesthetics. It will include ethics. It will include kinship or family relations. The pillars of culture has, of course, I've said aesthetics to do with the beauty, ethics to do with morality. I've talked about economics to do with the which it does is something to do with the distribution of resources. You've talked of politics to do with governance and structures of leadership. Yeah. Now, when you look at it, you realize that religion permeates all pillars of culture, particularly in tropical Africa, in Africa south of Sahara. You know, religion permeates politics. Religion permeates economics, how resources are distributed. It permeates the sense of beauty, yellow, blue, which is beauty. It permeates all departments of life, such that Professor John Beatty said that religion cannot be isolated in any department of life. So wherever an African goes with his religion, whether he goes to politics. So where is the demarcating line between culture and religion? If an African man is cultured, because culture is a total sum of life, and then religion, which is interestingly a pillar of culture, permeates the same pillars of culture. What does that mean? There's a very thin line between culture and religion. But then, culture remains culture anyway, because it is still the total sum of life, because it has to do with everything. So you can see on one hand, it is inseparable, particularly in tropical Africa, where the headman, the chief, where a chief does everything for God in African religion. When you want to become an ancestor in African religiosity, you do good. Abraham Lincoln, who is not an African, used to say, when I do good, I feel good. When I do bad, I feel bad. That is my religion. When I do good, I feel good. When I do bad, I feel bad. That is my religion. So that is his religion. And in a sense, that is the way it is in Africa. When we do good, we feel good. When you do very bad, we feel very bad. And in a sense, it goes with our spirituality in ancient Africa. And even in the so-called Christian Africa or Islam Africa, a lot of this baggage from African cultural heritage, or African heritage for that matter, it is carried across, that we have not shed off our religiosity from ancient time. Okay? We have not managed. We have tried to Christianize people, Islamize people, but they still carry the religio-cultural baggage because of inseparability of religion and culture in Africa. Even when somebody converts, they are still consulting the oracles of the ancestral pantheons, the medicine men. Even in the rite of COVID-19, you find people consulting African medicine. You find people telling the world, even Madagascar people who more or less, the African people, though they are light-skinned, they follow a lot of African tradition. Okay, they may not have the kinky hair that we normally have in most of the people in Black Africa. But you find the kind of traditional medicine they're employing to fight pandemics. You realize religion and culture in Africa is inseparable. It is a wide topic. I don't want to get into details. Now, we considered some of these things listed there, where you are told to discuss and define some of them, like culture, cultural transmission, material culture, non-material culture, modes, custom, folkways, ethnocentrism, cultural relativism, cultural universals, diffusion, acculturation, obstacles to cultural change, culture and modernization. We considered these things. I don't want to get back to that. We have already done it. So going directly to the question, what do we mean by culture? What do we mean by culture? What does it mean to be cultured? What do we mean by cultured? The term culture is derived from the German word Kultur, K-U-L-T-U-R, Kultur, which means civilization and cultured man or woman. And it is, in Western standard, it is synonymous to a civilized person. We don't talk of mankind. That's a sexist language to talk of mankind. We talk of humankind in the 21st century. Now, you see now here, we anthropologists who study the human beings, the study of humankind is called anthropology. And the social anthropologist tells us that animals have no culture. Is it to say they are not civilized? But if we are human beings, we have culture, meaning we are civilized. And I gave you a definition earlier of culture. I said culture is a total sum of life, which includes politics of the people, aesthetics of the people, ethics of the people, kinship of the people, economics of the people, okay, and so on and so forth. It is the totality of life, okay? But on the other hand, there is another dimension from the German Kultur, which brings the idea of civilization. A civilized person is cultured. When you are not cultured, you have no pattern of economics. You have no pattern of managing your economy. Managing your sense of beauty. You don't know what to wear, how to dress, okay? Because you are not cultured, you are not civilized. You don't know how to understand your kinship. You can even marry your cousin. You can even marry your blood because you are not cultured. You are not civilized. You are not able to tell the parameters in your boundaries. Where to reach, where to stop, where to start. Okay? You can go the way animals do. Okay? So culture has to do with, in a sense, with the civilization. Of course, that is a Western, more or less, understanding. But generally, in my African understanding, I can say culture is the total sum of life without ruling out the German etymology or background. But anyway, culture has been defined in several ways. One man, I don't like this guy, he's called Edward B. Taylor. In 1902, he defined culture as that complex whole, which includes knowledge, belief, art, moral, laws, customs, and other capabilities acquired by humanity as a member of society. My problem with Taylor is, of course, the way he's dismissive of Africa. He almost equated African people with apes. Okay? And that is something we have never forgiven him. Even defining him, I have to have a lot of grace to even read what he has written, because I read a lot and found he has no knowledge about Africa. He wrote a lot about Africa, equated Africans to animists, yet he never stepped on the soil of Africa. But in Africa, we don't attack an end person. I don't want to engage him. I just want to interpret him quietly without troubling my mind. So in interpreting Edward Taylor, though by default, I say that according to his view, each society does not have a discrete culture, but a general culture created and developed by humanity as a whole. And this view was shared by Edward Luther again in 1950. To say that each society does not have a discrete culture, but a general culture created and developed by humanity as a whole. Now, the issue of not having a discrete culture or concrete culture, that is another point of disagreement with this gentleman, because you cannot tell me there are no specifics in the culture. There are. Yes, you cannot have a generic culture. But let us also find what others say. Edward Luther in 1950 noted that culture is a sum total of humanity, or what has been created, the organized results of group experience up to the present time. Yeah, that is much better. Culture also includes all that human beings have made in the form of tools, weapons, shelter, and other material goods. Culture also includes all that humanity has elaborated in the way of attitudes and beliefs, ideas and judgments, codes and institutions, art and science, philosophy and social organization. In general, we can say culture is a total way of life. I'd said a total sum of life. And it is a collective heritage of any given society that includes thought, art, customs, beliefs, and patterns of behavior. Now, we may ask ourselves, what are characteristics of culture? There are quite a number. Without elaborating too much, I will list them. Culture is dynamic and not static. A brief explanation is that, as a characteristic of culture, there is no culture which stopped somewhere and doesn't stop. We are now in the era of science and technology. If you take African culture, or African, we prefer to talk of African heritage, because African heritage incorporates culture and religion. And as we have noted, the two go hand in hand, because religion permeates pillars of culture, making it a very complicated thing to draw the demarcating line. If you can't draw the demarcating line, that means we better appreciate that these are one and the same thing. So culture is dynamic, it's not static, it is not functionally fixed. It's not fixed somewhere, it's not nailed somewhere. Culture changes. What we are doing today, the era of science and technology, even preserving our teaching, whether it is the so-called informal teaching in African teaching methodologies, those who have studied African education. There are a lot of changes that must be incorporated. Even preserving oral history, our historiographies, through the medium of science and technology, it is an indication that culture is not static. It is dynamic. It's a dynamic process. The second characteristic of culture is shared and also random. It is random when we consider the fact that although cultural elements belong to the members of the group as a right, all individuals do not imbibe the culture or the cultural value at the same rate. So it is shared and also random. Some people consequently can be described as more cultural than others. Now, what am I trying to say? Now, when you think of the shared and random, we talked about, if you can remember, about this other vocabulary that I want to underline. We called it cultural relativism, where you are wise, and rather than condemning other people's culture, other people's styles of teaching, other people's cultures of marital betrothals or something like that, you appreciate the relativism in life. That life is relative, truth is relative. Your truth is not necessarily my truth. Your way is not necessarily my way. So you may have to run from me. The way we also talked about cultural diffusion, we said cultures diffuse. Cultures diffuse. You like it or not. You decide to agree with it or not. I talked about my encounter in Pietermaritzburg, South Africa, with my friend from Tanzania, Mara province, northern Tanzania, Luo from northern Tanzania. There's a province, Mara province is largely with the Luo people. As you can remember, if you have been following politics, about the lawyer who gave Nyerere hand time when they formed the political party NCCR Mageuzi, and Nyerere wanted CCM. Mabere Marando is a Luo, a tough lawyer from Tanzania and a politician. I hope he's now very old. Not very old, but elderly. So he taught me, we were cooking each and his day of cooking. And when I cooked my day, we shared the house and the cooking, the kitchen. And we wanted to save money in Pietermaritzburg, so we almost stayed in one house. And when he cooks, he had to cook everything. And cook. There's a day I cooked, he and his day, and whenever he cooked, his food was sweeter than mine. So I found myself peeling the tomatoes the way he was doing. Even today, when I have to cook, I do as he did. He doesn't know that I adopted that cultural trait. But so in the same way, cultures diffuse. So his culture diffused to me unconsciously. I do like he does. The culture of reading at night, I'm the person who reads at night. He likes to read during the day. With time, he also found himself reading at night. And he could say in Kiswahili, umeniambukisa kusoma usiku. Okay? That is what you call cultural diffusion, where you live with the people, the Busia people and the Luos, they more or less have diffused cultures into one another unconsciously. Okay? So there's cultural diffusion. So such diffusions shows culture is also learned. It is also learned. You can learn culture. Culture is also shared. It's a characteristic of culture. Okay, number 3, it is organic and supra-organic. Let me explain. It is organic when we put into consideration that there is no culture without human beings. It is supra-organic because it is far beyond any individual lifetime. Far beyond individual lifetime. So it is organic and supra. It is far beyond, we inherited it. I could see people in Hidunguri the other day burying somebody using It's at Githunguri, it was removed the other day, and buried somebody using the indigenous rights in the 21st century. Why could people behave as if we are in the 18th and 17th century in Africa? You can't poke brains totally. You may comment and say culture is dynamic, but because of the supra-organic nature of culture, you can expect some of these things to keep recurring, whether the replication is not very, very exact. It can't be duplicated 100%. But there is a sense in which it will not disappear. Culture will not disappear. If the missionaries in the 19th century trying to destroy it in central Kenya, for example, and westernize central Kenya than any other place, because the culture of the climate of central Kenya is very close to Europe, or some of the best climate is in central Kenya. And if they were not able to get rid of all the cultures of the people, they sang in 1930 the Mudraku Dance, which mocked the Western ways. Mudraku Dance was even banned, and it has never been unbanned even with the Kenyan government, unlike Mau Mau, which was unbanned in 2003 when opposition took over. The Mudraku Dance remained, in my view, remains banned. It was highly explosive political dances that were taking place to support some element of culture, like forms of circumcision, and they were tough. If you listen to some of the songs, you go to the archive, you get the content of Mudraku Dance. It is explosive even this minute. I listened to it, I feel sick. I found things were bad those days. It was also a political vehicle of communicating the politics of the people, the economics of the people, the social lifestyle of the African people who felt enfranchised, who felt oppressed and dehumanized, and they felt colonized, and they wanted to decolonize and deconstruct the overt and covert colonial structures. So, number 4, culture is overt and covert. Overt, of course, means it is open and public, but covert, it is hidden or disguised. So it is overt when we consider such artifacts, such as houses, such as clothes, such as speech forms that can be observed directly. It is covert when we consider some underlying attitudes to one's nature and the interpretation of the world's view. The other one is culture is explicit and implicit. Understand that explicit means a statement which is clearly expressed and definite. So explicit is opposite of implicit. Okay? And it is explicit, culture is explicit when we consider those actions which can be explained and described readily by those who perform them. It is implicit when we consider those things we do but are unable to explain them, yet we believe them to be so. So there are hidden things in culture, there are explicit things in culture, and implicit things in culture. Another final characteristic to consider today is culture is ideal. The 6th point, culture is ideal and manifest. So ideal culture involves the ways people ought to behave, or what they believe they ought to do. Manifest culture involves those things which they actually do and that are recognizable by others. That is, what others see them doing. The other thing to consider in the next 15 minutes before we conclude the lecture today is some fundamental aspects of culture. Of course, here we have values. Culture has values. And these values, of course, culture also has recipes, routines, and customs. Culture also has beliefs. Coming back to values, we say briefly that the values constitute those aspects of cultural practices, objects or actions that are valued by society. Values can be those aspects of culture that society wants perceived because they have traditionally been valued, needed, or wanted. Of all these cultural elements, some are more valued than others by society. For example, society expects every family to bring up children to be good members of society. It also expects decent funeral for the departed ones or departed members. It also expects a parent to educate his children and teach them religious values. The other one is recipe. So when you talk about recipes or recipe, recipes are the ideas and the understanding about how things should be done as prescribed by the culture in question. For example, how to perform naming ceremonies among the Kauma, the Digo, the Giriama, the Taita, how to bury the dead, all these things, are prescribed by culture in question. There are things, you look at the traditional Africans, in some places when a person is about to die, is taken out at the fire rate around the place where the dead person is shivering with cold out before he is presumed to die or he is thought to die. And of course, if he falls down, he dies, the hyena will feast on him. The danger is some people would crawl back after recovering, and that would scare people. The other one, if a person dies within your own house, or we call it huts, the traditional huts or traditional African houses, that house is sometimes demolished because of exorcising evil spirits, or you call the medicine man to exhaust the evil spirits of death. Whether he became an ancestor, and you know in Africa, ancestor is a promotion to the next world. Not everybody becomes an ancestor. But those who read decent living, hospitable living, careful living, good living, lovely living, friendly living with other people, those who are caring for the widows, the orphans, they become ancestors. Not everybody. Some brought about evil spirits. Others who brought good spirits. And you know, evil spirits would even cause earthquakes. Evil spirits in African society would cause unnecessary disagreement. But the good spirits from our ancestors would bring reconciliation, counseling. There was counseling through ancestral spirits by departed people. It was believed when you were even asleep, some could bring good ideas. Even some, even today, believe when they are in a mathematical class, they are working out a sum and they fail. They go to sleep. When they wake up, they are able to do so because the ancestors, the ancestral spirits have helped them square it out. Of course, those are beliefs among some religious cultures of the people in Africa. There are also routines, which refers to the actual doing and the regulation of those cultural actions or elements. There are also customs. There are recipes regulating the sort for recurring purposes. There are also beliefs. Beliefs are propositions that are accepted as true. Such acceptance may not be based on any logical or empirical considerations. Now, when we talk about empirical, I want to talk about that because they are master's class or PhD classes. You remember empirical, every research has to be empirically sensible. Every mature research, it has to be logically or empirically sensible, such that even if a person from another discipline, academic discipline, comes to read what you have written, she will agree with you because of the logicality, the empirical sense in it. So we are saying that beliefs are not necessarily logical or empirical, but they are held strongly. But when we come to academic work, every good research has to be done scientifically. Yes, proof of data correction, proof that one has gone to the field, proof that you have followed the canons of research, correlation of data. Even if there are beliefs, you are doing what we call metaphysical research dealing with the faith and the beliefs, with that you can't touch. It's called metaphysical, dealing with the metaphysics. There's a sense in which it is empirically acceptable because you have employed empirical processes. Of course, that is not a question for details here. Now, there are these other things related to what we have already done. I dare not repeat these things, my friends, but because running is a process of sometimes repeating to reinforce what people already know, I dare say it because even if we know it, it is good we remind ourselves. And I say that other things in culture, we talk about culture shock. I said when we go to an area which is radically different from where you come from, you may encounter cultural shock. The other thing that may affect you is the cultural universal. Cultural universals are to do with traits that are just the same across the world. Technology is becoming a cultural universal. Nobody can tell you, I don't know computer, I don't deal with computer. I've heard people telling me I don't deal with Facebook. I don't deal with... There are those fellows, a fellow with a PhD telling you, an old professor telling you, I don't deal with Facebook, I don't deal with WhatsApp. It is a person refusing to change, feeling like he's invented by the new revolution of science and technology. So you try to intellectualize as a defense mechanism in psychology. You try to intellectualize or rationalize and try to borrow academic argument just to be defensive, to say I don't need Facebook, WhatsApp, I don't write a lot, those so and so they are writing too much. Why are you not writing too much? Stop being defensive. You write till you die. Use science and accept change and deal with the change as it comes. You cannot live in the 20th century, in the 21st century. You can't do that. So there is also cultural relativism. We have dealt with it, where we should be cultural relativists. All of us in this class should not be cultural anything, but we should not be ethnocentric. That is its opposite. Where you judge people according to your culture. Anybody who is not within your cultural realm or cultural milieu is uncivilized. The way missionaries did in the 19th century. They did very good things, but somebody are not trained enough in anthropology and enough anthropology or missiology of work. Otherwise, they were too full of dismissals. And these dismissals are the product of the dreaming church, the independent churches, the Mudraku dances. They are responsible for a lot of poor handling of culture and gospel because they were dismissive. When you are too dismissive, everything you see you want to criticize, you may talk nicely, you may have people listening to you, but the end result is that sometimes you may go astray without having anybody to help you come back. And our people say, Murega akero, dalega agekatia, ageteo. A person who refuses to be guided by others or to listen to others will never know when he's getting lost. And you see, that is a danger. So we have to be cultural relativists anyway and accept cultural diffusion. Okay? accept it is a reality of life. Culture diffuses, and it's not, it's dynamic. And see how we work out with the dynamism of culture. If not, we may find ourselves enslaved. And when I talk about slavery and slave trade, I almost cry because I know what it did to us. I know what our people had done before, even before Christ. Here in this area, particularly the coastal region, where some people came from Saudi Arabia, befriended our men, made them friends, even before the coming of Islam. And they took them to Saudi Arabia. Those are the first people to take Africans from Africa. And when they reached there, the first thing was to castrate them and become turn enemy. A friend turns enemy. And those are harsh realities we always want to forget. But we can be enslaved again if we don't accept we are not cultural relativists or accept cultural dynamism, because we will be indefensive and refuse to learn new tricks in the game, go back to school and learn more, and decolonize ourselves. Yes, we'll be enslaved again. And the consequences of slavery, whether it is Bob Marley's mental slavery or Ngugi's colonization of intellectuality through language, it is still slavery. And slavery is bad. Intellectual, physical, deportations, slavery is bad. And we can only accept the cultural diffusion rather than stereotyping people and dismissing people. We will be slaves for all the time when we don't shed off ethnocentrism. Yes, thinking of people alongside, weighing people, measuring people in our own cultural standards. Ours are good, they are animals. Those are witches, we are the right people. We are the one. Even Adolf Hitler tried to say power to the people. Nazi are the people. Germans are the real people. They conquer the world. Versailles Treaty, we are mistreated. Let's fight. The Second World War came. If we don't free ourselves from such trivialities and broaden ourselves, we'll find ourselves enslaved again. There's acculturation. We talked about it. A specific form of cultural diffusion that involves a subordinate culture adopting many of the culture traits of a more powerful culture. I like to look at acculturation in 6 dimensions. And the worst form of acculturation is what we saw with the missionaries. Because they came and told us, you know nothing. Our cultures are stronger than yours. Shed of yours, by force or by whichever way. And there are times when certain children were chased away from school if you didn't belong to certain family. They were chased, okay? They diffused enculturation or inculturation. I prefer inculturation. The dictionary prefers to call it enculturation. And enculturation is all about dialogue between the cultures of the people and the new invading culture. When we have Western dialogue between the West and Africa, or these people, other people hear us and we hear them, we will be having a very good dialogue in culturation, okay? And ethnocentrism will die, okay? Okay? And we'll be able to adopt various things. We can be ethnologists or comparative students of cultural differences and similarities, fairly without trashing some. We shall also be ethnomusicologists, where we shall be studying the music across cultural perspectives without judging certain types of music as not good, primitive and all others. And we shall be innovative, ushering better ideas to terrify and inform the 21st century. All these things, I don't want to get into them. We don't want to get into all these details. I wanted to stop there today. If you have more questions, kindly let's talk it so that next time we look at the social stratification. Thank you. Just comment.